Today I'm here with my fall gift guide for 2025. This is a chance for me to highlight new releases or new publications that I really enjoyed that didn't necessarily make my best of the best list based off my personal taste, but I do think are worth reading. So this can be a guide both for gifting to other people and also buying books for yourself, or at least reading other books. If you're just looking for recommendations, you could definitely get a lot of these through your library system. I will have timestamps down below because I'm going to be talking about more than my usual genres. So if something is not of your interest, just skip along, but I really appreciate those of you that stick around till the end. This will be the only video I put out this week because it is Thanksgiving in the States where most of my subscribers live. And quite frankly, this video takes a lot of time to prepare and edit. So I'm going to give myself a break and wish you all happy holidays wherever you are. If you don't have holiday season this week, that's okay. Have a good week as well. All that being said, let's get started. First, let's start out with the horror section. And if you have someone who doesn't read a lot of horror, but maybe just reads one or two a year, if they somehow have not read Grady Hendrix's newest book, Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, this is a great one to pick up. I will give a warning though that this book came out earlier in the year, as most of his books tend to do. So if they are someone who is a fan of Grady Hendrix, you definitely have to check if they've already bought this book or read it. But I think he's just a really safe choice. He writes really digestible, popular books. And again, if they're not already a Grady Hendrix fan, I think his new release is a great way to get into him. And I think, again, it's just a very accessible one because sometimes, as we talk about on my channel, horror can be hard to gift because there's a lot of uncomfortable subject matter, trigger warnings and all of that make it a little hard to blindly pass along to our friends and family. Next, for anyone who shares my taste in religious and possession horror, I want to recommend This Is My Body by Lindsay King Miller. And this is a story that follows a woman who is raising a daughter by herself. Her daughter starts to have strange behavior, violent behavior, and it very much is a callback to this mother's youth where she also had similar behavior that involved having to bring in someone to do an exorcism. So very much your classic tropes, a great book for anyone who enjoys The Exorcist and is looking for a more modern take on it, and it was just overall a lot of fun. If someone is looking for a dark academia mixed with horror elements, I would then recommend The Library at Hellbore by Cassandra Khaw. This is a short novel that again has that dark academia aspect to it. This is the finished copy, and if you're someone who really likes to gift beautiful editions, I'll note that the color edges are really pretty here on this hardcover. So I do think if you're looking for something that feels a bit more gifty, if that is a word in this context, that I do think that this one would look really nice wrapped up, and of course, more importantly, has a really good story within it. Next up, we have The Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre by Philip Procassi, and this is one that follows a group of older individuals, particularly following a woman and her best friend who are investigating a series of deaths in their old folks' home that of course doesn't seem to be natural, but perhaps there is some kind of supernatural presence going on. This is one that is just really fun and enjoyable. I almost want to recommend that you give it to your grandparents because I think it has a really positive representation of individuals as they get older. There's not as many books, or at least I don't see as many books getting published that are from that older perspective, but it also seems like a really weird book to give to your grandparents, so maybe don't do that. But still a really fun read. Just be mindful of your audience and how they'll take getting gifted this one. Next up, if you know someone who enjoys Indigenous horror, maybe they have already read and enjoyed all the Stephen Graham Jones books, I'd recommend as a different author for them to pick up. We have The Whistlers by Nick Medina. He has several backlist books I also recommend, but for this video I'll focus on this one. And it's a great story that involves trauma where it really plays with the is it real or is there something supernatural going on, and particularly again has that Indigenous focus because it is set around a reserve and really ties that in the same way that Stephen Graham Jones does in his books, which I know a lot of us, including myself, really enjoy. So if you're looking for someone else, maybe they've read everything by Stephen Graham Jones, this is my next recommendation for them. And for those of you looking for a book that involves historical horror, I would recommend The Possession of Alba Diaz, and this is a story that is set in the 1700s in Mexico and very much has those elements of, again, the history, and it's nice to have a non-European or even a Canadian, United States focus of that history, but instead focus on the history of Mexico for a lot of us is perhaps a little bit less familiar, and also still having a really good possession style story with great characters. This one is slower paced, but very much, again, for anyone who loves like rich, slower, more world building in terms of the historical elements, if they love those kind of books, I would definitely recommend this one. And I do want to round out the section by sneaking in a backlist title because it did get a new cover this year, so I think it counts. counts, and that is Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones. Again, if you know someone who really enjoys Stephen Graham Jones, they may not have read this one because it is an older release that again just got new publication. It's a short haunted house novella. The one thing to know is it is a novella, so again, if you're thinking about the weightiness of the gift, this might be good to add to a stack of books, but just be aware if you're just giving them this book, it is a very tiny one, so it might not have that kind of physical presence that some people really enjoy when they're wrapping up a gift. But in terms of the content, it's great. And again, if you know someone who loves Stephen Graham Jones, even if they've read this one, they may not have this edition. Maybe they read the ebook, which was cheaper back then, and so this could be a good one to surprise them with. Now let's talk about other dark fiction, so things like thrillers and mysteries that don't necessarily fall under the horror label. The first one, for transparency, is one of the few in this video, and I'll try to make them all known, that I have not read yet. I'm purposely saving it for my own December TBR, so you might have heard about this depending on the order these videos come out, but it's called 8 Very Bad Nights, edited by Tad Goldberg, and it's a collection of Hanukkah noir. And I've said for years, I've been putting out whenever I can these Christmas and holiday themed horror videos and other dark fiction, because I think it's really fun to read dark fiction at the happiest, most lovely time of the year. And I often say that the Jewish holidays, which do fall around the same time period, are never represented in this list, and it's not meant to be a purposeful exclusion, but just simply because I never had one to recommend. Again, I am being a bit selfish here, that normally I like to read everything so I can properly recommend and review it to you all, but I really wanted to save it for my own enjoyment this year, just something a little bit different to read. So I haven't read it yet, but I have high hopes that this will be a new favorite, and it is again one that has colored edges, so if you're looking for something a little bit more gifty and know someone who would appreciate a Hanukkah related book, I think that this one is, I believe it's going to be a great one to pick up, so I'll keep you posted as I read and review it myself. Next, if you're looking for a cozy mystery story, so for those that kind of love those more cutesy mysteries that don't necessarily have any gore on the page, I would recommend Cheddar Luck Next Time by Beth Cato. And this is one that is exactly what it sounds like. It is this cute story focusing on this case on this autistic main character, or character with autism, I should say, where she has an obsession or special interest in cheese. So there is a mystery going on in the story, but there's also a lot of cheese talk. And I thought it was just really cutesy. Definitely, again, not to my personal taste, but I definitely think there's an audience out there. So if you know someone who loves cheese and loves cute mystery stories, this is an instant perfect gift for them. Next is Death on a Cauldron by Emily Paxman, and this is technically a mystery with fantasy elements, so maybe it's a bit of a cheat for this section, but I think there's a lot of overlap, and I want to put it here because while it clearly has fantastic elements, it also is very much focused on a mystery in a closed room setting on a train, which of course is going to be a callback to the great Agatha Christie. And so we follow these individuals on this train, something happens, and then you have to investigate who was involved. And I just thought it was very well done, good characters, good writing, good mystery. And again, I think a lot of us, or at least I do, really appreciate mashups. And so again, if you know a fantasy reader who also likes mysteries, I think it's a good way to satisfy both those itches at the same time with a really good story. The other one I want to talk about, I have not read through at the time of recording this. I've looked through it, but haven't done a cover to cover, and that is You Are the Detective, The Creeping Hand Murder, A Solve It Yourself Mystery by Maureen Johnson and Jay Cooper. And very similar concept, but this one is much more interactive. So while the other one is more of a choose your own adventure style novel, this one really gets into the more interactive, where you have layouts of the kitchen, you have different interviews, and I think that this one, especially for those that lean into more wanting that interactive experience and you really like those multimedia novels, this one will really appeal to you because it's kind of less of a novel and more of like just a really cool mystery to go through. And again, I love it as I page through it, but I just need to properly go through it and actually attempt to solve it, which I'm already assuming I will do terrible at, but it's still going to be so much fun. So again, I'll follow up just because I don't like to recommend too much that I haven't read or fully experienced myself, but I do think it's cool and definitely one that, again, I think a lot of you could really enjoy, assuming it's as good as it sounds. Next up, let's talk about science fiction. I have a few here that won't necessarily make my favorites of the year, but I still would recommend to the right audience. The first one is Extremity by Nicholas Binge, and this is a sci-fi novella, so I do want to highlight the length. It is fairly short, but it is a sci-fi thriller. Very standard in terms of that detective story with a science fiction edge to it. But I will say, for the first chapter, the first page, I was pulled in. It's engaging, very much a page turner. And again, if you're looking maybe to add it to a stack of books and you're looking kind of for one more smaller book to add in there, there. It is a fun one to go through. It is exactly what you would expect, but I think it does that very well. Next up is one that I almost want to put on my favorites list. It's so not my normal taste, but it was so well done, and that is Space Rooms by A.G. Rodriguez. And this is a story of a space janitor who gets pulled into a larger story, way bigger than themselves, and has to somewhat save the universe, etc. type narrative. It is just really fun, and from that premise, you would think the story is really campy, but in my mind, as someone who often doesn't love sickly sweet stories or things that are over the top or satirical, this one walked the line really well, where it did feel like it had enough weight and seriousness to the story that was happening. It didn't feel overly silly. So I do recommend this one. If you're someone who likes science fiction that is more on the lighter side, this is a really fun one that in my mind did not get enough attention this year. Next, I want to recommend Future's Edge by Gareth L. Powell. And this is one that follows an archaeologist who accidentally infects himself with this alien parasite, and the story ensues. This is one that I'd recommend to those of you that are just looking for a good, solid, standard science fiction novel to gift to someone who really loves the genre. I will be clear that it is not on my favorites list, which is why it's in this video here. I do think it's objectively doing what it's trying to do, but it didn't quite delight me in the same way that, again, my favorites list is going to be. So arguably, while I recommend this one, just know that it is a little bit of a safer choice, and some of the ones, again, that make my personal favorites of the year, in my mind, are a little bit higher in terms of some of the quality, kind of reaching to be a story that's a little bit more innovative or interesting. But again, still a solid pick. It's just not a story that really stayed in my mind the same way as the ones that, again, are hitting that favorites list. I also do want to highlight a few backlist science fiction titles that got re-releases, one being The Prestige by Christopher Priest, and this is a re-release of a story of magicians that are in this rivalry. It's a story I have read before and love. I'd really like to do a long form video on this one, but I feel like I'd have to get into spoilers to properly talk about why I love it so much. If you know anyone who has not read it, this Tor Essentials re-release is a perfect gifty way to give it to someone. I think it is a great balance between being science fiction and also delving into some darker elements, and I just think it's fantastic. It's definitely one that kind of crosses into different genres, but I had to put it in one category, so I put it here. But highly recommend, if you haven't read this one yourself, do yourself a favor and gift this one to you, because it is definitely a favorite of mine that I never talk about enough. The other re-release I'm very excited to have copies of, and I think a lot of you will be excited for these too, and that is the Murderbot Diaries. So I have volume 1, which is a bind up of the first two, then we have volume 2, and then volume 3. So each of them binds up 2 of the novellas. I know something that I've gotten comments on my review video of the series is the fact that the novellas, as they were originally published in hardcover, typically were really expensive to buy. So I am happy to see them bound up in paperback, a lot cheaper. You get a lot more bang for your buck. Of course, there's a TV show that's now come out. I haven't watched it. I don't watch a lot of TV adaptations and so forth, but if you know someone who has seen it and they haven't gone back to the series, I think this would be a really great, easy pick for a gift of a science fiction reader who is, again, loving the Apple TV show. All right, now let me rapid fire through the fantasy category, and I do think it's a bit of a wider range when it comes to fantasy. There's a lot of different readers that I'm trying to appeal to, so I'm going to try to have some for everyone. The first one I want to talk about is novella Fate's Bane by C.L. Clarke, and this is a sapphic story that very much pulls from clan history, and so very much has that Scottish feel to the story while still, again, being very much his own. I just found it to be very warm and cozy, some great to consume over the winter months. And so I do think that there are readers who will really enjoy this one. Again, note that it is a smaller edition compared to some of the books I'll talk about here. For those of you that love that dark fantasy, very much in the style of something like Wilder Girls, so it kind of almost bends into horror, but not in a traditional way, I have Honey Eaters by Kathleen Jennings, and this is just one of those like unsettling books with really pretty prose and really deep, unsettling atmosphere, where it's very much more about that feeling rather than a really fast-paced plot. But again, I know there are readers out here who love this one, and there's something about these covers. There's so many books that come out with like weird flowers coming out of people's faces, and they definitely have an audience. So if you know someone who has a bunch of covers that look like this is the next one they should pick up. Next, for a fun adventure story, we have Angie Kills a King by Evan Leakham, and this is one where we have a servant who kills the king when they get an opportunity to, then they go on the run, they end up meeting up with someone else, and together they are on the run from those that are hunting them down. This is one that's just, again, a solid adventure story. It is easy to fly through. If you know readers that are more about having a fast-paced narrative rather than really slow-paced and taking paragraphs to describe a table. If they're looking for a story that moves, this is a fun one to pick up. I flew through it. I think it's just a really fun story. And again, definitely I think it's a very safe pick for those that are looking for something and maybe don't exactly know the reader's taste. And I want to talk about Grave Empires by Richard Swan. This is the same author who wrote The Justice of Kings and its sequels. I love that trilogy, and so I was very excited to pick up this one. And I will say that it is another solid fancy story. It is objectively well done. I do like his writing. However, I just don't think the story is as interesting as the last. So what I'm trying to say is it didn't make my favorites list, but I'm definitely seeing a lot of 4 and 5 star reviews out there. I think I still gave it a good rating. So I do recommend it again as someone who is trying to maybe find a book for someone who loves epic fantasy. I don't think it's the buzziest book of the year. They may not have heard of this one, but again, I think it's a really solid pick, a safe pick without anything too weird in there that will definitely please anyone looking for a solid world building story with great prose, good characters. It definitely has that kind of holistic package that you might be looking for. And for a backlist title, I do want to mention that Orbit is coming out with these nice hardcovers of the Witcher series. So we have Sword of Destiny. They've been very hit or miss with which ones I've been getting. I basically just have this one, but I know that they have published or are publishing all the different editions. So I do think it's a great one for anyone who still loves The Witcher. I know things have gotten weird since there was the actor switch of the TV show and all that, but in my mind, if you love the books, that shouldn't change. And this one, I should mention, does involve illustrations. I don't want to spoil anything later in the book, but it does have drawings throughout it. Again, a very gifty story. So if you're someone who likes or appreciates those details or knows someone who does, I do think that one of these books or several of these books would be a great thing for someone to find under their tree. So this one, again, to the right reader, I think is a really good gift. Next, I want to highlight 2 children's books. If this is not up your alley, feel free to jump to the next timestamp. But essentially, the first one we have is More or Less, which is words by Alison Hughes and pictures by, oh, I'm going to say this wrong, Oji Mora. And this is one that is all about highlighting the idea of really teaching kids about decluttering, taking care of your stuff, and eventually donating it and, moving along. And I think as someone who is a parent, it's a really hard concept to teach because kids are very attached to their stuff, and certainly we don't want to rip away those memories. But as a kid gets older and develops, eventually they do outgrow some of their stuff, and not everything can be precious, not everything can be kept. So I think it's a good conversation. This is one that's probably targeted for a younger child than my own. It only has a few words on every page. I do wish there was an older edition. Maybe there are other books out there you could recommend that would be more to someone like, kind of in that 5-6 range. But I think it's a really good conversation about recycling, using things up and using and giving them away and so forth. So I really like the messaging in this one. The other one is just kind of a fun book, and that is Swept Away at Witch Camp by Erin Vanessa. And it's just a really cute witchy story. I know I always like the idea of really introducing my child to some of the aesthetics that come with kind of horror culture, but you don't necessarily want to do creepy things depending on the kid's interest. My kid's not really into anything too creepy. So I like that this one's all about witches, and so we're following this child who's very spirited and opinionated, and as they go through their adventures, I just think it's a really cute book. So I was really pleased to have this one in the collection. Now let's talk briefly about middle grade fiction. Again, feel free to skip if this category is not for you, but I know some people do have either a child or niece or nephew that they're trying to buy for. So I'm just gonna give you a couple ideas here quick. First one is Myrtle Jr., a mystery novel. Sleuths on the Loose. And what I love about these is it's very much inspired by the older Myrtle books, which I did actually recommend in previous year's videos. And so this one is targeted to a middle grade audience where we have a detective who's trying to solve the mystery, and basically it's giving you hints along the way. And I think it just is great for the kind of reading experience that maybe some of us are trying to recreate. I grew up reading things like Encyclopedia Brown and really those sort of solve it yourself type mysteries that we're now seeing in the adult sections. So I think for anyone, again, who is a budding mystery reader, I know I really loved mysteries growing up. This would have been so fun if I was in that age group. So definitely one that I think, again, has an audience. Then we have The Weirdies by Michael Buckley. And this is one that follows a group of triplets who are ones that grew up in this eccentric home and now are living in an orphanage. It very much feels like a recreation of that really popular series called Misfortunate Events. I'm sorry, I never read it growing up, so the full title is blanking in my mind, but very much feels like the same. You have these like kooky kids, these strange events, and it's just a little bit like off and settling. And I just like that there's different books for different readers. So if you have a reader who doesn't necessarily always read perfectly the certain, standard bestsellers that are always on the kids' table, I do think that this one might kind of appeal to them. It's just a little bit different, a little bit off, and I think it's kind of fun. Last one for the category is The Gate, the Girl and the Dragon Dragon by Grace Lin, and this is a Chinese inspired story that very much focuses on that cultural experience. So I think it's great for either two groups, perhaps someone where a parent is of a Chinese descent and they want to infuse that cultural experience with their child, or for a lot of us where we just want to give our children different experiences and really help to see them out of a diverse lens. I know my own child, their school is very, very white, and so having different representation is really important to me just because they don't always see it in their day-to-day experience. And so I am really mindful of wanting to introduce different stories, different perspectives, and hopefully excite them to want to travel the world. And if you know someone who has a love for mythology, I do have two books I'm going to recommend here with the caveat that I haven't personally read them. They're not at my taste. They were sent to me without request. So the first one is this book that's all part of this series, Myths, Gods, and Immortals. The first one is Circe, New and Ancient Greek Tales. And then there is the Morgana Le Fay option, again with New and Ancient Arthurian Tales. And so both of these, again, are recreations where they're pulling older stories and republishing them and also adding new stories in. I'll be honest, just for my taste, I'm not overly interested in some of this mythology and different tales and so forth. They're just not my interest, so I chose not to pick up these books. But if you know someone who does, you might want to look into them. Again, I have not read and reviewed them. I want to make that clear, so I'm not being unfair to anyone that I can't personally recommend them based off the content, but I do think they're very gifty. So again, they have those colored edges. They're both hardcover and just really pretty to look at. I'm just not the target audience, and again, that's why I didn't request them for review, but they showed up anyway. And I did decide to put them aside for this video because I thought they would be an interesting pick to at least look at if you know someone who might be interested in these. And if you know a movie buff, particularly someone who loves horror and vintage movies, I would recommend this beast of a book, which is so heavy to hold up. And so this is Jaws, Memories from Martha's Vineyard, and this is the big 50th anniversary of the movie. And so it gives you a big behind the scenes look into the production of it. So for transparency, I have not read this book cover to cover. I flipped through it the same way I would with like a coffee table book. I can say that this book is absolutely gorgeous. If you look at the details here, you can see that it's filled with pictures of the production, the different sites, all of the different tricks and everything they had to do with the shark and so forth. It is so detailed. It is just a beautiful edition. So it's kind of a niche book, but again, if you do know someone who either is a big fan of Jaws specifically, that's probably the easiest one, or again, just loves like vintage film and so forth, you kind of know your audience. It's definitely meant in my mind to be a coffee table book. It's not the kind of thing you necessarily want to sit down and read just all in one go, but it is hefty, it is big, it is definitely really complete. And that's the other thing too. I think a lot of times these big books often can feel like they're just kind of smacked together for some cash, but this one really feels like a love letter to the film. It didn't feel like it cut any corners. The size of it, the number of pictures is incredible. So again, highly recommend this one to the right audience. And finally, I want to talk about nonfiction. The one I want to mention is When the Earth Was Green by Riley Black, which is all about plants, animals, and evolution's greatest romance. This book is a little bit out of my normal wheelhouse, where I normally do, for transparency, as most of you know, read mostly fiction, but I do find myself year after year wanting to get more into nonfiction. For someone who reads a lot, I feel like I should take some time to read and actually learn something. And so this was a delight for something that's really outside my wheelhouse. I'm not normally someone who gets excited about a book about plants. I'm not much of a plant person. And so it's amazing how well done this book was, because it made me really interested in a topic that I was only mildly interested in. It kind of felt like the kind of book that I should read, but once I got into it, I got really invested, really engrossed, and I do recommend it. So again, if you're someone maybe like me who doesn't read a lot of nonfiction, but if you're looking again to learn something, to get in the habit of picking up nonfiction more regularly, or know someone who regularly reads nonfiction, this would be a great one to gift or read for yourself. And future ritual popping in here because I actually had some more books show up and other things that I wanted to cover in my gift guide, which I had already filmed and thought I was done for the year. But I do want to highlight a few things. First off, we have Alien Perfect Organisms by Sean Hamill, which is an original novel that is set in the same universe as the 20th century movies. I know there's a TV show coming out, but this is not related to that specifically. But again, if you're someone who loves the films, maybe you watch the original trilogy over and over again, or just looking for more, this one is fun. It's sci-fi horror and all of that. And while often I don't find novelizations to be the most most memorable out of the box experience. I still have fun with them. They're still like easy books to fly through. And again, sometimes it's just fun to spend time in the universe, especially if you're someone who happens to be really obsessed with it. I actually only watched Alien for the first time earlier this year and have been really loving it. So this was fun to get into some of the novelizations. I know there's others out there, but this is the new release that just came out. So if you know a fan, it's a good one to check out. Also, I want to talk about V. Castro, Tales of the Dark Feminine, which are inspirational stories of the world's fiercest goddess. Originally, when I heard about this book, I thought that it might be about like real life heroes, but specifically they really honestly do mean goddesses. So they talk about Athena and pulling from different mythologies. And so if you're someone who just loves those really strong kick butt women that are infused in all of these different mythological traditions, then this is definitely one that you might really enjoy. Or again, as a gift, you can see it has these dark edges. It has really nice binding. It's all nice and crisp, lots of photos within it and so forth. So again, I often think when it comes to gifting books, some books kind of look better wrapped up and kind of make more of an impact. This one is nice and shiny and very well produced. So again, if you're someone who loves all of the various mythologies, loves something fierce and feminist, this is definitely one that is a good contender for the Christmas list. Then I also want to talk about some updated bindings. I think that getting new editions of classics that someone loves is always a great way to go. This is a beautiful hardcover of Dracula, one of my favorite horror classics. And again, it's got this beautiful front cover, beautiful binding. This one doesn't have pictures, but I think again, as an object, I'm not usually a fan of hardcover, but these hardcovers are really nice. I also received a copy of Carmilla, which I have not read myself, so I know I need to change that. But again, I think the actual artwork is beautiful and would definitely be perfect for someone who already loves the story. This is another one I personally need to read, and that is the Gilda stories. And again, one with a beautiful cover, the really nice hardcover edition. I really like the inside of this one. So again, good ones to put on your radar. And these are all put out by Penguin Speculative Fiction. They're special editions. So I do think that, again, if you're looking for a book, if you know someone who loves a book, sometimes getting them a really nice copy of a book they already love can be a really nice gift. And to switch gears a little bit further, I'm going to also talk about something completely out of my wheelhouse that I actually really love, and this is the Witches Cats tarot cards. And these are a set of tarot cards that are all centered around really cute kitties. And I am not someone who truly believes in the power of tarot and all of that. I'm not really a witchy person or so forth. I don't believe in any of that, but I also think that you can have fun. I do love the aesthetics of witchiness and so forth. And I am someone who loves cats. And so when I got the opportunity to get these, for me, it's just really been fun. It comes with this little book, which is great for newbies like me, where it explains the meaning behind each of the different cards. And I really had to learn and look up, and I still don't even know if I'm like doing the readings right. But again, it's just kind of a fun, for me, it's more of a party game where you pull out. And so you do have these beautiful cards. So you have like the bad kitty and all these different cards within the collection that each, again, have a different meaning behind them. So it's just, for me, kind of a fun party game. Maybe if you're having like a bachelorette party, or well, obviously it's like this is supposed to be a Christmas gift guide, but you know what I mean? You kind of, if you know that person who loves witchy things, they love cats, all of that, this is definitely one that is super cute. And I could see, again, having a great audience, especially for someone, again, who loves tarot cards. For someone like me who is just loosely interested, this was still so much fun to play with. All my friends had a hoot playing with it. And again, it's definitely one to kind of crack out when we have a couple of drinks and just looking to have something fun to sit around at the table with. So that's it for this video here. I'd love to know the books I talked about. Are you planning on buying anything yourself, maybe borrowing from the library or gifting it for a friend or family member? I'd love to know, what books are you gifting this holiday season? And I'd love to hear how you're doing. If you're celebrating holidays in the States, happy Thanksgiving. Of course, it is already past Thanksgiving here in Canada. I always get a lot of wishes on the day. So just to be clear, we did Thanksgiving in October. You're a little bit late celebrating it now. So thank you so much to everyone who stuck around to watch this video until the end. Really appreciate your support. You know the drill. Thumbs up, drop a comment, even just an emoji like a stack of books really helps me out. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Hit the little notification bell so you don't miss a video from me. Otherwise, I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.